live stream going and go ahead and start recording. Actually, I think Rich is getting back in right now.
There he is.
Hey.
Hey.
All right, and all right. I think I've messed enough up tonight to make it work. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. I think everybody's here that I was kind of sure was coming. There's a couple people that didn't respond back. So, real quick, again, we don't have any public on right at the moment, but this is being recorded. It is also being, it's also being, it's what happens when I start the live feed. All right, so the live feed's feeding back through again, but I got that
double looping.
Yeah, it was double looping. So, so the live feed is going, and we're also recording the meeting. We'll record the breakout session when we break into the breakout session. Again, we're not taking public comment, and the reason we're not taking public comment is public had the opportunity to comment through the strategic plan process. We'll also have a chance to comment once we complete all of the goals. Once they're all set, this is actually just a workshop. And so we'll be doing that and moving forward. So again, we've already done Directive 1 and 2. We're going to do Directives 3 tonight, or Directive 3 tonight. In your packet that we handed out to you, that's pages 15 and 16 related to Directive 3. And then the public comment part that we had related to that was on pages 38 and 39 in the back of the book. So I hope you have those if you need those. When we go to do breakout tonight, I think I've mixed it up a little bit, but the group that's going to break off will be myself, George, Sonia, Andrew or Andy, Ed, John, Linda, and Tina. Those will be the folks that break off tonight. And we have a couple other people that might join us from the strategic plan group. They'll just stay in here if they come in. So I'm going to send the email here the email here in just a minute for those that are jumping onto the other meeting. And then when Anita gets started, I'll jump off and get that meeting started so we can go. If we're moving along comfortably tonight, like we were on Wednesday night last week, will not take as long. We've scheduled an hour and 10 minutes to be in group and then to come back and review what we've done, and we'll do the same situation here tonight. Any questions before we get started? All right, Rich, I need to make you host. And then, so I don't forget. And I've done that. So Anita, if you will take and lead us through this directive. And while you're doing that, like I said, I'm going to jump off and get the other sessions started.
Okay, great. Thanks, Steve. So this evening, as Steve said, we're doing Directive 3, encourage smart growth and thoughtful redevelopment. So I'll sort of paraphrase the outcomes and key themes that we're going to be discussing this evening to find goals. So outcomes that we're looking for this directive are the township ordinances address the goals of the comprehensive plan and are uniformly enforced. Another goal is that a town center is developed and connected to other areas of the township via walks, bike trails, and a variety of transportation. Goal for an outcome for historic sites to be recognized and preserved. and that businesses and buildings are well maintained and redeveloped to present an inviting look to the township. In terms of the key themes that we heard from residents, the desire for a town center of some type. Different people had different ideas about what the town center might be, but the idea of a town center, the importance of safe walkability via sidewalks, walking trails, and bike trails. There were a lot of comments in this particular, with this particular directive having to do with that idea of safe walkability. And more open space with trees and landscaping to have that kind of a look in the community, and to preserve the historic sites, and desire for attractive storefronts and buildings. That was noted in a number of these. So those are some of the key themes that we heard from comments. You can see in your comments there were quite a variety of things that people were suggesting to give ideas. So with that, I believe we're ready to go into our breakout rooms, and I think we have our group here. The others have gone, it looks like. If anybody has not gone yet to the other group.
Oh, Tina, you're
Yeah.
out of here. Get out of here.
I think
I'm
Tina,
going,
John, and
I'm going.
John, you're with us too.
Yes.
We will also trade Chief Lund. You can go to the next one too if you want.
Jeff?
Who's the other group got that we want?
Do we have Linda? Is she supposed to be with ours?
I'm not 100% sure. I didn't catch
Okay.
that list. It was kind of rambled off quickly, but this
Okay.
looks like a good group. I'll go with this group.
Let's
Works.
All right. That's good. All right, so again, initiatives. Oh, yes, Bill.
He's-
Do I have to? We have to
You have to unmute him, Rich. Do you have to do that?
unmute.
There you
You want
go.
me to share the notes as we go along, screen share, and you can see the notes as they're being typed?
Would you like to see the notes as we go along, everybody? Is that what you'd,
Or you just want to, I'll just keep the notes and see
Or
them
do you
later or
wanna-
something.
shall we just
Kind of
keep?
hard to read
okay.
them most of the time.
It actually displays a lot better on YouTube if you do go with the notes.
But if you show them, you mean?
Yeah, if you show the notes, it looks the YouTube's a lot clearer. So I suggest sharing the notes as we go along.
Okay,
Your
so
pleasure.
that's fine. We'll put the notes up and
Okay.
have a chance. So as we did the other time, just asking that if people have a comment to make, that you just physically put your hand up, and I'll try to get all the pictures on the screen so I can see if someone has their hand up. Let's see here. See if I can get you all up here. Now, usually I have a little, okay, let's see here. I can't quite get everybody
Yeah,
on.
I can't.
If you do the full screen button, Anita,
Yeah,
and then right where, if you click where it says like, right now it might be at the top, it might say gallery view or speaker
here we
view.
yeah.
You'll see two little bars right by the share window, and you can actually grab that and pull it to the left, and you'll be able to make the share screen smaller, but everyone else's faces will get bigger.
Oh, okay.
You see it?
Yeah. The share screen is, it's covering, I think this is, let me see what I've got here.
So if you
Swatch.
put your mouse right to the edge of that share screen, it'll change colors, and you can, right where the two bars are, and you can click on that and pull like the window over, and it'll make the displays bigger.
My window right now is open with 3 panes showing right now.
Yeah,
So-
that's and do you also see the share screen as well as the 3 panes?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so go to the share screen.
Yeah.
I mean, just put your mouse over the share screen, and you'll see, as soon as you get over there, the bar will change a little bit. You'll see 2
Yeah.
dashes. You see the
I
2
don't see-
dashes?
I don't see 2 dashes. I see,
Okay.
Let me see if I can find.
Anita, I'll be able to help you out. If somebody has
Okay.
their hands raised,
Yeah.
I'll
If you can do that, then we don't need to.
I'll raise my hand for
Oh,
other
here we
people
go,
if you
Here we
can.
go. I got it now. I couldn't see the little arrows there. Now I've
Yeah.
got it. So I should be able to pull it across the top maybe here so I can see what's going on. Okay. Oops. Here we go. How many of us are there? We've got
6 or 8.
6 or 8. Okay.
1, 2, 3,
I've
4.
got 6 right now. I'm trying to get the
We
others.
have Bruce on as well, but he's a public.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, yeah, Rich, if you'll help me, if somebody has their hand up, I'd appreciate it. That'll be good. So let's, as we have discussed before, the recommended initiatives just give us some thoughts to start with goals. So let's look at the first recommended initiative. Address pedestrian safety and connectivity in rewritten ordinances, as well as open space as part of thoughtful redevelopment. Just kind of a summary of what we're looking at in terms of that first one. But the idea is pedestrian safety and being able to have connectivity once these ordinances are rewritten, and more open space. So what are some thoughts about some potential goals for that part of it? Yes, Suzanne.
I know Bruce is working on a greenways master plan now, which involves a whole trail system. So that would add to address the connectivity of it.
Yes, yes. Good. Any
And
other?
yeah, to piggyback off that, I think I mentioned it in both meetings so far, but the DVRPCDCD, yeah, I messed it up this one. But the DVRPC grant would actually, like I said, connect a loop around the bottom of the township. And Bruce actually forwarded us, me and George, an email this morning with a grant that could possibly also help us out with that.
Okay. Any other thoughts with respect to pedestrian safety and connectivity and rewriting of ordinances? Yeah.
In regards to like multimodal transportation, I know I brought this up, I guess, in like the first breakout that we did, but actually having installed bus shelters at the stops that we have along Westchester Pike, as well as 252, because right now some of these stops are literally just a sign on the side of the road or on the side of a hill. And so that obviously doesn't invite a lot of people to use public transportation. I think the other thing is to have a conversation with SEPTA to make sure that we can have, once the full town center is developed, that there's a bus route that goes into that area. Right now we have the 104 or the 102. 102, I think, goes to, or the 100 goes to just the corporate campus, and 104 goes from Westchester Pike to 69th Street. So I think that they need to have a conversation about getting another route added inside of the Ellis Preserve. And, you know, obviously, coincidentally enough, as we said in the beginning of this, I was riding my bike this weekend. We do not have, I know that there will be bike lanes installed along Campus Boulevard, Stony Brook, and Troop Farm Road. But, you know, and this is going to be, I think, part of the Greenways plan as well, but having a safe bike lanes across the township. We always want to talk about how we want people to walk and things like that, but we never really, or until recently, started putting the, not to be funny, the rubber to the road on getting that done.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. Any other thoughts on that? Yes, Walt.
I know some communities have like, you know, a small trolley that runs through their town that could put, you know, set up a route that local residents could hop on and off within the town. I don't know what the cost, something like that would be involved, but particularly for older people that maybe aren't up to walking, a trolley, in township trolley route might be useful. I'm talking about a motorized trolley, not a track trolley.
Right. Okay. Anything else on this one? Yes, Suzanne.
One thing I noticed in Center City that really caught my eye relative to bus shelters. They were just a normal bus shelter, but one wall was stained glass. And I'm wondering if we could do something like that and have the businesses, if a business would sponsor a bus stop. So maybe we could get multiple bus stops in the area. I don't know if that's more glamorous than we want, but they were absolutely beautiful.
Well, actually, not to interject, but I think that that's exactly what we need to do. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think Steve mentioned this in one of the other breakouts, but as a former SEPTA attorney, I can also say that the municipality itself will be owning these bus shelters. So it's either we're going to be paying for them out of the township budget, or we can work in some collaborative manner with the different businesses to try to get something. But we want something, you know, that's going to be appealing. We don't want the standard bus shelter that you
Right.
kind of just put, and there's one wooden bench in there. Now, I'm not talking about going something crazy, but yeah, you're exactly right, Suzanne. I've seen when I worked for SEPTA, I saw the partnerships with different municipalities where they did things like that. And I think that we can do that here in Newtown. It'll look nice. It'll look better than having people standing on the side of the road. And it'll also be an incentive for them to use public transportation. Because one of the comments said it best, right, is that the reason, one of the reasons why there's so much traffic is you can't go anywhere unless you get in a car. You know, even a simple walk down to the street, you're taking your life into your own hands sometimes.
Right, right. Good thoughts about this one. Very good. Shall we go on to the next, maybe? 3.2, to work toward redevelopment of existing businesses and new development to create a town center with a strong sense of place and multiple forms of access. So what are some ideas to work toward as goals to accomplish this type of initiative and get to the outcome we want, which is a town center developed and connected to other areas via walks, bike trails, and a variety of transportation? What thoughts does anybody have about this?
Mm.
Yes, Bill.
Is the town center viable? I mean, we've been talking about it for ages, but it's in a tough part of town. You got to rearrange roads and everything. Has a real engineering study been done? Is it achievable?
So are you talking about, there were comments made, some were about St. Albans Circle, but some were more general in terms of a town center, not necessarily.
I'm talking St. Albans Circle. To me, that's what everybody's been thinking is the town center.
Right.
Well, if somebody's got a better place, maybe that's a better idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Thoughts about that? Anybody? So if you're worried about St. Albans Circle, are there other alternatives?
The only one that would come to my mind is Ellis.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're just reworking the corner of 252 and 3. I mean, we could, if that was a viable option, we could rework it, have a center pushed back, like maybe where the firehouse, the old firehouse is, and behind Upper Crust in that area.
Mhm. Chris, you had your hand up too.
Yeah, I think the Ellis Preserve is being developed to be a town center. And, you know, I don't know if the owner of the property there at 3 and 252 is interested in working with the township or the other property owners there to incorporate that property into a bigger town center development. But I think the whole Ellis Preserve tract there is being, you know, their idea of their development there is that is going to be the town center for Newtown Township.
Maybe some others are familiar with that as well. And if you look at that aspect of it, does that make some sense, or is there a potential there as another idea?
And I don't know if there's any way that the township can work with or approach the owner of that property there at the corner of 3 and 252 to, you know, so that that property can be incorporated into a, you know, a larger town center area there. But it's, you know, looking at it, it is kind of, everybody thinks 3 and 252 there is the center of the township, and it's a really run-down looking area of the township.
Yeah, Susan, I think you had your hand up, and then Rich.
It would be nice if that developer would work with the Ellis developer to really beautify this township, because I think it can be done. I think it would be absolutely beautiful. And I think the Ellis developer will make sure that their portion is very well done.
Yeah.
Can I be the pragmatist in this one? And I don't mean to take the oxygen out of the room. We can continue to say we wish he does that,
Yeah.
but we all know it's never going to happen. I mean, when are we going to talk to him? In between our next settlement, you know, for the 15 lawsuits facing the township. So I think that we should not focus on that and actually look at areas, like Chris said, whether it's going to be the Ellis Preserve or whether it's going to be St. Albans. One thing I would just add in there, I do know that Linda McIsaac is working on something in regards to St. Albans Circle of some sort of revitalization. I will be the first to admit that I haven't been part of that, so I don't really know where those discussions are. But I think that one thing that we need is a Christmas tree, or a holiday tree, excuse me. We need to bring a holiday tree back for the lighting, because for the longest time we had a beautiful tree there. And, you know, look, the township did a great job and the fire company did a great job last year. But I think that having the holiday tree back, that is one area, that is one event that the township does consistently that I know a lot of people look forward to. And it draws a very large crowd of all different age groups. And I think that, you know, we need to kind of be focusing on what we're going to be doing with that, because Christmas is only 6 months, or the holiday season is only 6 months away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Got to watch what I say. Yeah, I don't know.
Rich, you. I
That
think-
was the nicest tree there last year than in the past,
Oh, I agree with
probably
you.
10 years.
I agree with you.
Okay, Rich, did you have?
Leonard actually said it better than I would have said it. I was gonna say, we can talk about the corner of 252 and 3 all day, but how realistic is that, just going off that?
Any other thoughts about the town center idea? Any other? Yes, Walt.
I don't know, again, going back to the 252-3 intersection, something else that might help tie St. Albans and Ellis together is if some sort of a pedestrian bridge could be installed or put up over 252 that would tie the two together. I mean, realistically, crossing 252 is not a real viable option in most cases, but if some type of a pedestrian bridge could be put up there that would be not enormous but tasteful, that might help tie the two together in
Some way. Okay. Any other thoughts about that? All right, well, let's move on to 3.3, provide for future use of land as in the comprehensive plan to preserve the community's character and social and economic vitality. What thoughts does, what are some goals we could work toward to help make that happen? The idea of the future land use.
One thing that comes to my mind is obviously preserve the historic sites that we have in town now.
That gives a strong sense of place. Is that the part of the vitality of the community?
Yeah, I was going off the small town
town.
character.
Okay.
We do have quite a bit of historic sites in town. If that's something that is important to the community, we should really look into preserving the land that we have now.
Okay. Okay. So preserving the historic character of the community right now. And What about the idea of the future use of land as in the comprehensive plan? Any thoughts about that aspect of it? Yes, Leonard.
So I said this in last week's session as well, but I think it's relevant here too, is the adoption of an official township map. And what that would do is it would identify parcels of property, not the full thing. So, you know, look at Garrett Williamson, for instance, we're not talking about the full 200 acres. You would only need, you know, slivers of that. And by doing so, it gives the township the right of first refusal, so that that property ever goes up for sale, the township would be able to be the first ones to jump in on getting that. There is also another sort of avenue. So obviously we all want to say preserve open space, but then the issue comes down to how are we going to buy that open space? Because, you know, you need to buy the land. There is a municipality, and I believe it's in Chester County or Bucks County, that is going to have a referendum on the ballot for an earned income tax, just it's 0.5%, just for like an open space preservation fund. So I thought that was something that was interesting that kind of came across my desk. I've only done a little bit of preliminary research on it. So I don't know whether they have an earned income tax altogether or not, but this one is only calling for 0.5%. And it's, like I said, it'll be a voter referendum come November for this township.
Okay.
And I just don't want to say the township's name because they're a client of mine, and I don't know whether they how advanced they are in this, but I suspect it's been advertised, duly noted.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that one? 3.4 is about creating a standard for identifying, preserving sites of historic significance, including repurposing when possible. And so, you know, that's one of the outcomes we're looking for, is historic sites are recognized and preserved. We talked a little bit about that. What further thoughts does anybody have about that?
If I could, this is Sanford Barr. Could we make a distinction between a historic site and a historic building? If the building's historic and worth preserving, but is not valuable at the particular site it's located, could it not be moved?
So I think that, Anita, you need to do the reminder.
Yeah, Sanford, this is a workshop. We're not at this point taking comments from the public, but thank you. There will be an opportunity once we come up with the goals for the public to be able to comment on the goals. So we would very much encourage you to do that. But tonight it is just for the participants in the workshop. So just a reminder about that. Thank you. All right, so any thoughts then about the identifying and preserving sites of historic significance and repurposing? That idea came up as well. Yes, Rich.
So this continues to go back to grants. Me and the folks at the Paper Mill House, as long as with George Sheritz, we filled out a grant application for the Paper Mill House to get their roof redone. There is a lot of money in grants that come along with historic sites. At the moment, a lot of them are tied up because of the current the COVID crisis. But if we're going back on a 5-year plan, looking into more historic grants from the state would be a way to go.
Yeah. Other thoughts about this particular idea? Anything else about the historic sites and preserving those or repurposing some of those? Yes, Leonard.
The only, obviously I agree with 3.4. The only thing I would be hesitant on when we say possible repurposing, when you look at what Lister's done, I think they've done a good job of some of those historic buildings. They've turned it in, they've saved the barn, or they've made it into the post office, or they've made it into, a regular office. But I also don't want to see, and this is an extreme example, like the octagonal schoolhouse becoming a Starbucks because it's being repurposed, right. You know what I mean? Or the John West House becoming a, some sort of music venue, something like that, because it's got the green out there. So, I don't have a suggestion, Anita, except for the fact that I would just be cognizant and worrisome of what we mean when we say possible repurposing, because there's a way of doing it in a tactful way, and a tasteful way, and a not so tasteful way.
Okay. Okay, good.
In my
point.
opinion, I mean, it's just me.
To remember, yes. Anybody else on that? Yes, Bill.
And I don't have an answer to this, but how involved is the Historic Society in the things that we're talking about here? How, or should they be more involved?
Does anybody have a comment on that?
I can speak on that. When I went out for that grant, they were extremely helpful, for lack of better words. If I needed some information about the paper mill house to put on the grant application, they were the first to reach back. I want to give kudos to Larry Fisher on that. He was the one that kind of spearheaded getting the Historical Society involved, but they were I will give them praise. When I went out, when George and I were working on that grant, they were very involved.
Good,
One of
yes.
the things too that, well, I'm sorry, I cut you off, Suzanne.
Second time now,
And
Pal.
Leonard, okay,
They are a very, very responsive group. Very helpful, very responsive group, and they know Newtown's history.
good. Yes, Leonard, I think you had a comment?
Yeah, so the president of the Historical Society actually reached out to me, I guess, last week or 2 weeks ago. One of the things that they have had on their agenda for a long time is a historic preservation ordinance for these, for these, these buildings right now. There's nothing that we have in Newtown that would preserve them. For instance, the ones that are privately owned and things like that. Now, we're not talking about micromanaging what a homeowner can do inside their house. It's the complete opposite of what we want to do. But Tina Roberts Lightcap and I, along with Doug Humes from the Historical Association, Kathy, who I'm drawing a blank, Cavalier, who's the president now, and John Custer will be sitting down to kind of go over what we can do in terms of historical preservation ordinance, because we've identified that this is something that's been noted in this strategic plan, but also other municipalities around us have it. Marple has it, Lower Merion has it, Willistown has it, Newtown, Edgemont has it. Newtown does not have one of them. So it's something that we're gonna start getting the ball rolling on.
So there's also that idea of creating a standard for identifying what qualifies as an historic home. Do you have any thoughts about that aspect of it?
Me particular, I can tell you that the draft ordinance that they have has that identified. It also, and some of the, perfect example, if you think of Gettysburg, for instance, we no longer want people to think in the context of just the structure, but we're talking about Indian rock formations and battlefields and things like that. So, not that we have battlefields here in Newtown, but areas like that could also be part of a historical structure or historical significance.
Good. Anything else having to do with this particular one about historic sites? All right, so let's go on to 3.5. And this is the idea of incentivize business and property owners to maintain or redevelop their properties with an appealing look consistent with the township's character. This is pointing toward the businesses and buildings are well maintained and redeveloped to present an inviting look to the township, one of the outcomes that we would like to achieve. So what thoughts does anybody have about incentivizing business and property owners? Yes, Suzanne.
Tina mentioned last week that the tree giveaway, to get, maybe if trees aren't the exact thing that we want in the front of the business, potted plants or something on that line. Like the hanging baskets that we're not doing this year because of the widening. They are absolutely beautiful. And that's Miss Stardy's that really helps out a lot with that, and Paul.
Mm-hmm. So there's a business that has jumped in, and the idea would be to get others to join in some way. In some way. Yeah. Other thoughts on incentivizing to get the look, a consistent look for the town? Any other thoughts on that? not so much. Okay.
I believe, not to beat a dead horse, the corner of 252 and Route 3.
Yes.
That is, we, when you're driving through Newtown, the corner of 252 and Route 3 does not look like Newtown. And that's, I guess that's all I have to say about that.
Okay. Okay.
I think you're the only one who thinks that.
I just, I can't, yeah, all right.
I agree
At
with
one point, I think, Mike, who presented, it might have been Linda McIsaac, about a planting theme with certain colors and types of plants. So you knew wherever you were in Newtown, business-wise, like you would see that wave of color or that theme. I think that is a great idea.
So sort of creating a theme.
Yeah.
Okay. Other thoughts about appealing look that's consistent with the township's character? Anything else? All right. Well, if not, then the last one we have here is uniformly enforce the zoning, subdivision, and land development ordinances as part of the smart growth and thoughtful redevelopment. What thoughts does anybody have about that? Yes, Leonard.
I think this comes down to the importance of having a well-qualified zoning hearing board for the first part of it, right? So I think that the subdivision and land development one is already uniformly enforced. I think that individuals just don't understand that there's a litany of different types of zoning regulations that we have here, whether it's a PRD or a cluster ordinance or anything else that a CCRC that we have in the township. But I think that really what they're trying to get at is the zoning is, you know, perfect example of my neighborhood is that you have back in the Heights, it's a beautiful neighborhood, but you have a hodgepodge of houses because zoning hearing boards in the past have allowed the building of oversized structures on undersized lots. And you get a litany of things in this neighborhood. And I think that there is no consistency sometimes with the zoning hearing board in the past. I think that they've gone pretty good over the last couple of years. But I think this comes directly into having a qualified group of individuals on the zoning hearing board. And I think that we have a great group now, and we've had one in the past couple of years. But that's how I read this, at least.
Okay. Other thoughts on that? That whole idea of the uniformly enforcing has come up in different ways. And any other thoughts? Yes, Suzanne.
Education might also help, like Leonard was saying about our board. If they were educated in the same way with the same classes to maybe be more cohesive with their decisions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So some type of training with the zoning hearing board,
right,
and others maybe in addition.
But I also think that goes to the public, and that's the difficult aspect of it.
Yep.
Is that there are a lot of legal nuances. I mean, the zoning hearing board is a quasi-judicial body, right? So they can't sit down and explain every single thing to the members of the audience. So sometimes, you know, you go and it's speaking in a different language for people who aren't familiar with it. So figuring out a way that we can educate the township residents on what it is that they're seeking this relief from, what the relief will give them, but more importantly, what types of, again, the different outcomes you can get depending on which zoning classification you're in. You know, you're gonna, you know, Lister is built under the cluster ordinance. BPG is built under the PRD. What is the PRD? You know, there's got to be a way of, and look, these are, you learn this in property law, but there's a way to synthesize all this into an everyday sort of handbook for people. And I think that, again, that just comes down to education. People just are confused and they don't understand. And that's when the information void really bites us in the rear end.
That and the process. I don't think people are familiar with what they need to do to achieve what they're trying to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So maybe understanding what's possible and how to achieve what they're for, and then some uniformity of how the zoning and so forth is enforced. So that's an important piece. All right, well, we've kind of gone through some of these recommended initiatives. I'll just kind of say, as we are sort of maybe wrapping up here, are there other thoughts that you've had about any of the ones that we've talked about? We've just talked about that township ordinances addressing goals of comprehensive plan and uniformly enforcing, and the town center idea, historic sites, and then businesses and buildings that are present an inviting look to Newtown Township. So any other thoughts about any of these that we've already talked about? Any further thoughts about any of these? Okay. Well, if not, yes, go ahead, Leonard.
No, I was just going to do it because I just wanted to clarify, because I didn't want it to sound like when I made the comment about the tree that I was taking a crack at the township. I agree with Chris that, you know, the tree needed to come down. That's not what I was getting at. I just wanted to make sure people didn't think I was taking a crack at the township on that.
Okay. Okay.
We're putting a new tree in though.
All right. A new tree is coming.
A new tree's I don't know. I thought it was supposed to be planted by our Ryan Tree Service, I thought, Leonard.
I think they're waiting until they figure out what they're doing with the circle and the square, or square, gather in the circle. Yeah, circle in the square, gather in the circle.
But we do have a plan. It's just, I don't think it's obviously finalized yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to get in touch with the other group and see how the other group's doing,
Sure.
and I will be right back.
Okay. Yeah. Well, in the meantime, if anybody thinks of some other things, Walt, did you have something?
Well,
Just a question to the supervisors. Do you think that getting redevelopment on the Route 3 section 252, do you think that a one-time tax incentive would have any benefit or bearing to help that cause along?
Mike, go ahead. This is all you.
I think the person we're dealing with there is very unique.
Mhm.
It's been expressed to him many times by many people that we really would like to have the corner cleaned up. And he continues to avoid the corner and do everything in the township to aggravate every other resident possible.
Well, I'm well aware of that. I'm just.
So, I mean, he has been, I have not personally talked to him, but I know people have talked to his representatives on numerous occasions when he's come in for all these other crazy things he wants to do. And I know for a fact, they explained to him, it would be much more reasonable and acceptable if he came into the corner, we'd work with him on developing something that would definitely, you know, in this lifetime, clean that corner up. And because it obviously is the gateway to our town. But yet he comes in with, you know, Gradyville Road, the road in from his Marple development. Then he comes in with down there at the golf course next to the Subaru dealer. I mean, he just doesn't. And then he comes in with a hotel over at the next to Mastardi's and the Veterans Memorial. He just doesn't seem to have any focus on this corner. And obviously everybody in town is focused on it. And again, I have not personally talked to the man. I know numerous people have reached out via his representatives, and it just never seems to go anywhere with him. He did get the fire.
Other thing.
Go ahead, Leonard. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think the other thing too, Walt, is we are, in terms of that tax incentive, we are only bound by what we can do in the second-class township code. So whereas other municipalities, such as the city of Philadelphia and other municipal agencies have that ability, we are confined in what we can or can't do in terms of taxing authority through what the second-class township code says. So I don't know, sitting here right now, whether we would have the ability to do that. My first inkling is no, but that's something that, I mean, we could definitely have Rich and or Joe look at, because it's a good idea to try to get some sort of incentive for him to do it. But again, thinking of the second-class township code, I don't know whether we'd be able to do it. And because it's also very odd too, the way that it's structured. If the county has something, then we get knocked out of it. But if the county doesn't have it, then we are allowed to do it. It's sort of convoluted and complicated But I think Rich and Joe can definitely look into that. So I think we should probably put that down.
It was just a thought, something to try to force it a little bit. You know, in most cases, money talks, and it's not like, you know, it's just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, anything that we're allowed to do would be more than supportive of. It's just a matter of, we'd have to have somebody investigate that a little further.
It's the same thing with, you know, I personally think it's time to start having a conversation about a hotel tax. You know, these hotels are going to be coming, and I think that that is something that we can use to help achieve a lot of the initiatives that we want. But the issue comes down to, can we do it? And when we look at it from a legal perspective, preliminarily, the county has a hotel tax already. So the way that the statute's written is that we, by color of law, would not be able to. But again, that's just a preliminary overview.
A lot of considerations, obviously. A lot, yes. One of the things we didn't really touch on a whole lot, we talked about connecting areas, the idea of the sidewalks. Is there more that could be done to connect more with sidewalks to be able to connect areas around? Does anybody have any thoughts about that? A lot of the members of the public mentioned that. Yes, Rich.
So I have a, if the township decides to put sidewalk into a neighborhood, the township is responsible for it if it's not on the side of the homeowner. And correct me if I'm wrong. So it would be a big burden on the township to put sidewalks into neighborhoods that already do not have them.
It seems like some of the comments from the public had to do more about walking along Route 252. Now, you know, that's a state route. So,
Right.
you know, that's what people seem to be keying in on that in Route 3.
Then I apologize.
No. It's
On
just
252, you pretty much have a sidewalk. Though it's not against the side of the road, you have basically from, you know, the corner behind the Wawa all the way down. It's going to weave all the way down from there through BPG down along over to the old house, and then across the street they were just putting a sidewalk connection from through Lister's old driveway, so you can all the way down to Episcopal pretty much now on the one side. Now obviously there's nothing on the other side, but it is much of an improvement, and a lot of people use that trail for walking.
yes, definitely. Rich, there was a comment too about sidewalks along Malin Road and Ellis Lane. So there were some neighborhood connections there too. Yes, Suzanne.
I think also the question was raised about heading south on 252. There were individuals that work and they're walking actually on 252 to get to, where was it? Terraza and the Avs to work. And I think that was a concern for some people. And that's a treacherous place to be walking on the road.
That's dangerous there. I don't know how you would do it because the topography there is just
It's horrible.
just not conducive to kind of, you know, put any kind of walkway in.
That might be an idea for when you said about the trolley. Well, you know, that may work in those scenarios, like from the center of town, only so far north, south, east, and west.
Right.
To give another option.
Yes, Rich.
So Walt, are you aware of any other township other than, I guess, Philadelphia that would have a trolley that
I know there's one around. I'm not sure if it's New Hope. It's been a
in
long
Bucks County?
time I've been up there, but But even if you go down to the shore, some of them, they have the little jitneys and things like that. I don't know whether it's feasible. I don't know what the cost would be. And of course, you're never going to have it enough hours available to suit everybody, particularly people that are going down to Tecca or Terraza to work down along 252 there, unless you run it like from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. and that's going to be pretty costly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Right.
I was just curious if there was any other townships in Delaware County that were doing it, but
I don't think in Delaware County, but I think up maybe in Bucks and so forth, probably where it's a little more rural too, maybe not quite the density we have.
Or maybe the trolley could be peak hours, like morning to work and evening leaving to get to one of our cool bus shelters.
Yeah.
Our cool bus shelter.
Yeah.
Good, good. Yeah.
You know what, just to add another thing, and I don't know if it's on the first one, when I was talking about the bus shelters, Suzanne just kind of jogged my memory, and Walt saying the thing about the trolley. This is definitely a reach here, but something to kind of get away from having to drive so much. When the township finishes the greenways program, and we have not just the walking trails, but also bike trails and everything, or bike lanes, the indigo bikes, like what you see in the city.
Oh, yeah.
You're never going to see the amount of them probably, but you could put those indigo bikes inside that New Wells Preserve and maybe another station somewhere else. And I think people would ride them around. It might be more of a benefit to the people. Oh, I froze.
But we can still hear you. Importantly, we can still hear you.
I'm going to have to excuse myself a minute. I think my husband's calling me.
it's a flattering close, Leonard.
Yeah.
You just have to be careful about regulating them because, for example, like you go up to New York, they'll charge you anything they can get away with.
The one place I've seen them, Old City Alexandria, around Washington, D.C. That's an old town with a lot of historic sites and shops and so forth. And they have a pretty successful one, but that's sort of a different tourist type area compared with maybe some others. Yeah. Yes, Bill.
I don't think this would work, but I'll throw it out there anyway, kind of following the theme of the trolley around town. Could there be feeder, and it probably wouldn't be trolleys, vans to take people to the bus shelters so they would then commute, okay, on public transportation. So in other words, you take them out of the neighborhoods and take them to bus centers, but you'd have that feeder, van so they don't have to drive and park in town or drive all the way in town or wherever they're driving to.
Okay. Yes, Leonard. Yeah.
Did you hear anything I said before I got cut off or no?
No.
Not really.
No. Did you guys hear what I said about the indigo bikes?
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
in the notes.
Yes, we did hear
Yeah, there were
that.
some other comments after that about them too, from Bill and Anita.
Got it.
Yeah. No, that's.
My great idea, and then the internet gave out on me. It could have been the case cracker, everyone.
Don't blame it on the internet.
Yeah.
Veronica wants to eat dinner. She's over there pulling the internet wires out.
Uh-oh.
Kidding.
Yeah. I was just looking to see if there was anything else among the comments.
All right, if you guys give me one more minute, the other group said that they need about 10 minutes, about 10 minutes ago. So I'm checking with them.
Okay, we'll check in with them and see what's happening. Interestingly, there was a comment made about more affordable 55 and older communities, not that the township can control what happens with that, but that whole idea of being able to have different modes of transportation and different communities that part of the comprehensive plan, I guess, and ordinances that help support that. So I just noted that that was one of the comments from one of the residences. Someone asked the question about can businesses and residences be held accountable for maintaining their buildings and land? I suppose at a point, there's only so much that you can do. If there are ordinances that support that, are there ones that can be enforced more than perhaps they are now?
I'm sorry, what was the question, Anita?
Well, I was just commenting, there was a comment about can you hold businesses or residents accountable for maintaining their buildings and land? Are there ordinances in place to enforce that would help with that? That was just one of the comments from one of the residents.
Property maintenance ordinance is in place.
Yeah.
So that's maybe what they're talking about then.
But I don't think, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but none of that would be triggered. I mean, we can't say, 252's got rust coming down the stucco. That's the property maintenance code wouldn't get triggered for that. They're talking about someone has a car, hasn't been registered in 16 years, all the tires are dry rotted and it's sitting there with a squirrel's nest in the trunk. Isn't that when the property maintenance
Well,
code kind of?
stuff like that, and debris, construction debris, construction equipment, stuff like that. Yeah, you're right. If somebody's house is rusting due to the stucco being bad or something, it doesn't go that invasive.
Yeah. Okay. Ah, there we see Steve.
Want me to stop sharing so we get everybody back in?
You can keep sharing. We'll let your group go first. That
Okay.
way we don't have to make you go down and back up.
So we're getting everybody back here, I see.
Yep.
And I believe that's everyone.
Okay.
All right, welcome back to everyone who went away, and those that were here, thank you. I see Bill already actually has his up. Is there somebody from the first group or the group that stayed that would like to walk us through what your group discussed? Somebody ought to volunteer. Bill volunteered to actually do all the note taking.
I think we actually decided on Chief One. I think he was the one who was going to be reading them off.
I'll second that.
Right.
The man of many words.
Is that easier to read?
No.
Oh, okay.
Might need to make it just a little bit bigger.
Okay.
That's probably, I got it there.
Got it.
Yep.
All right.
All right, so for the zoning subdivision land develop ordinances, written to address goals of the comprehensive plan. The discussion was the Greenway Master Plan, whole trail connectivity system, the DVRCP loop around the bottom of the township, looking for a grant for that. Because of all of the volumes of traffic, encourage public transportation, a multi-model transportation, install bus shelters along Westchester Pike, and that would be inviting to people to boost public transportation. talked about maybe getting businesses involved to sponsor bus shelters, possibly having an ad wall and as one of the walls of the shelters. Try and work with SEP to add new route for the Ellis Preserve Shopping Center and have safe bike lanes across the township. Talked about some communities that run a small trolley around the township from one end of the town to the other to help promote less traffic in the township. Consider Indigo bikes like Philadelphia in select areas of the township. Adopt an official township map, obtain slivers of land, giving the township the right of first refusal for purchase, and possibly fund with tax dedicated to purchase of land. Also consider a hotel tax and explore legal options for of the hotel tax in the second-class township. For the town center, developed and connected to other areas of the township by walks, bike trails, and a variety of transportation. Discussed is a town center viable? And what is would be the town center of Newtown Township? Has there been an engineering study done of St. Albans Circle or any alternate locations such as Ellis Preserve to see what is actually possible? What could be made of a town center in an area like the St. Albans Circle? Can the township approach the owner of the property, Route 3 and 252, to see what they can be done about cleaning up that property and incorporating that into the Ellis Preserve? Talked about the possibility of a pedestrian bridge over 252 from Ellis Preserve to the St. Albans Circle to link those two areas. Partnership of the Ellis Preserve and other developers working together, particularly the developer who owns the property at 3 and 252, and is that even a realistic expectation? The need to redo the holiday tree in St. Albans Circle. Leonard's a big proponent of that. He wants to make sure that that's done so he and his family can enjoy that in the holidays. Sidewalks on 252 from Wawa North being developed. Walking on 252 south from the center of the township is very dangerous. There's a lot of employees that walk from the bus stop south on 252 from Westchester Pike to like Tecca. It's a dangerous place to walk. Talked about historic sites being recognized and preserved. Preserve the current historic sites, retain the small town character. The Historic Society was very helpful in grant development, and they know the township history. Historic preservation ordinance needs to be developed. A draft version is supplied by the Historic Society. Neighboring townships have this ordinance of what qualifies as a historic home or property. The paper mill house filed for a grant to redo the roof. Look for historic grant restoration. Lister's done a good job repurposing historic buildings. Don't want buildings not to be tasteful if repurposed. Businesses and other buildings are well maintained and redeveloped to present an inviting look to the township. Talked about it, like was talked about, I believe it was last week, encouraging a tree giveaway, hanging basket program along Westchester Pike, and similar support from the business community. Have a color planning theme to maintain consistency along Westchester Pike. Route 3 and 252, that intersection there is not attractive, does not reflect the character of the township. Importance of having a well-qualified zoning hearing board. In the past, oversized buildings on undersized lots have been permitted. Training of the zoning hearing board, educate the township residents on what zoning changes they are seeking, zoning classifications, etc. Also educate the public on the process of how zoning works.
All right.
That's it. Yep.
Good. Very good. Okay, so if we'll get, whoops, yeah, Sonia, if you'll share your screen. And if we can get somebody to volunteer on from the group that left and came back.
Can you see the document?
Yes, thank you. Would somebody like to walk us through that document, please?
I can do it, Steve, because I have to move it up and down anyway, if that's okay.
Okay, that'll be great. Thank you.
Okay, so our group talked about that there's already some of the zoning ordinances being reworked right now. And the goal of that is to have it completed by the end of 2020. And after that, there will be some work on rewriting the subdivisions and land development ordinances and zoning. And that is the idea is to have that completed by 2023. With respect to the zoning and land development directive, expected outcome, the greatest problem that the township faces is the uniform enforcement of these ordinances and zoning laws. We'd like to see more definitions in those laws to eliminate some of the vagueness, perhaps even put in some illustrative captions through the definitions to help people understand how it's supposed to be used and interpreted. We talked about zoning overlays to identify the different districts in the town, one of which is St. Albans. That was discussed discussed at length. One of the big problems with St. Albans is, of course, the traffic around the circle. We want to continue to use it. We want to have activities in the center of the circle, but how do you get pedestrians there safely? You have to somehow eliminate or reduce the traffic. We talked about different ideas to do that. Do you just close down the traffic to it entirely? That was discussed. In that discussion, we also talked about doing some kind of experiment over the next 5 years for different ways to implement crosswalks or road closures and see what's most effective. We want those businesses to encourage a walkable community. We talked about loop sidewalks, and we talked about how most likely the parking spots in that Casey shopping center are going to be lost, some of those front parking spaces. So do you buy another piece of property? Do you develop another parking lot? Do you have dual front businesses, for example, along the Casey's shopping center? That would encourage walkability, and it would also keep those businesses afloat when those parking spots are eliminated. Of course, the issue then becomes, where do you put these parking spots? Do you create a municipal garage? Do you buy the lot behind the Rite Aid? Do you rezone the north section of Rhodes Avenue to a C1 designation? Going back to the definitions, we talked about how other townships like Lower Merion and the city of Philadelphia illustrate their definitions, so it makes it easier for anybody who picks it up to understand what the restrictions are. And within some of those books and illustrative definitions and manuals, a design guide for each specific area, along with visual enhancements of the town, such as sidewalks and bike trails, so they can actually visualize what some of those ordinances say. If there's a redesign, require developers and property owners to account for sidewalks, bus shelters, etc. Obviously, the more tools we have, the better we'll be positioned to enforce and implement these ordinances. We talked a little bit about sidewalk seating. Right now, Newtown Township does not allow this. It needs to be addressed in the overlays. We want to encourage it, and it's also important to develop any kind of town center. Talking about the town center, obviously, St. Albans and Ellis Preserve came up a lot. St. Albans has a lot of impediments to it that Ellis Preserve does not, primarily the traffic and the parking issues at St. Albans. We talked about how perhaps there could be some kind of harmony between these two centers. They don't have to be in competition with one another. There's already going to be a trail or pedestrian promenade from SAP to Whole Foods. And Whole Foods is directly across 252 in St. Albans. Maybe another developer might come along and consider building some kind of bridge or walkway that will continue the promenade from Whole Foods into the circle. And obviously, we don't want businesses that are competing against one another between Ellis Preserve and St. Albans, because it wouldn't really encourage the walkability from one side of the promenade to the other. We reduced competitive businesses in the area. In the comprehensive plan, a business improvement district was discussed. You encourage those businesses to contribute to a fund used to enhance and redevelop the specific districts. There's an ordinance or tax that they can use to encourage it. This was talked, this discussion came about in how, and how we could get the businesses to help with the development of the town center, encourage them to do that. There was some discussion about a task force to be created to harmonize the shopping districts and the trails. Consider adopting a complete streets policy ordinance to encourage the township to ensure these connections are incorporated in redevelopment plans. Rent should be considered between these two centers, Ellis Preserve and St. Albans. St. Albans is probably going to be more economical for many of the smaller businesses. And we talked about the St. Albans task force that's been spearheaded by Linda in our group. It's a very forward-thinking group, and it's in line with all that we've been discussing right now. Bike trails and other transportation modes would also assist in creating a town center. With respect to the historic sites and preservation, Tina and Leonard in this group were approached by the Historic Society regarding a 2003 ordinance that did not go anywhere. The Historic Commission would need to be involved in re-looking at this or re-evaluating this ordinance. In the past, it was just too restrictive. Those restrictive pieces caused it to fail. And if we revisit it, we should start with why did it fail in the past? There was strong objection because of those restrictions. We can start this discussion with the Historical Society about striking those portions. They seem to be more open to it today. The Historic Society has all the sites mapped. It's very active. We have a lot of historic sites, and we're doing well generally in this area. We asked whether or not the Historic Society might need more support from the township to continue their work or somehow improve on it. And then there was a suggestion to get an ordinance done, and if it needs to be revisited or revised in the future, we can always come back to it, but at least we've got the ball rolling with this historic preservation ordinance. Another protection for historical sites is an historical overlay that will add extra protection. And again, coming back to the comprehensive plan, adapt and reuse certain historical sites, such as the Paper Mill House and John West, consider using them for other events and uses. With respect to the businesses and other buildings well maintained and redeveloped to present an inviting look to the township, the big question is, how do you get a private business to do this? How do you get them to spend the money? Do you provide a loan or a grant? We talked about what happened in Phoenixville. Steve had a lot of information about having obtained a matching grant in Phoenixville. Once the process got started, the pressure for the other businesses followed. So if they got a grant where they matched whatever the business put in to the redevelopment cost, the Phoenixville would match it through the grant. And we see a little bit of this happening right now in Newtown Square. The Acme Shopping Center was upgraded, probably because of the pressure from what's happening at Ellis Preserve. And there are other mechanisms to encourage developers to do this. We talked about implementing zoning ordinances. with the idea of what we want the township to look like in the next several years. So the ordinances might be developed now, but it's talking about, in 5, 10, or 15 years, how the township's going to look. What can we do to incentivize businesses? And also, do we force them into doing some of these things? Do we use a form-based code? And again, would an overlay work as a requirement for redeveloping some of these areas?
Very good. All right, great. Got great things coming out of both groups. That's awesome. Having listened to both, does anybody have any comments they'd like us to make that, something triggered a thought that wasn't brought up, or a piece to add to that in that way? Anybody? All right, sounds like everybody's happy with the kind of things we came up with. So again, the staff meets tomorrow, and we'll take a look at both what we did last week and what we did tonight, and really try to work through on some goals and get those back to you. Hopefully we'll be able to review several of them on Wednesday night, just to kind of put it back before you, just some thoughts that we're having. Any other thoughts for the good of the group? Everybody's ready to go, right? All right. So we won't make you stay any longer. And I thank you for all coming out tonight. I know it's a hot one, and hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Remember, we're going to do this again Wednesday night and next Monday, and most likely we'll have a session on the following Wednesday night just to pull everything together that we brought together. So anyway, thank you. And I look forward to seeing you all Wednesday night.
Steve, you earned another bonus,
Thank
finish
you.
before 8.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot,
Good night,
Steve. Good
everyone.
job.
Bye-bye.